Thank you again, Susan. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to talk. So everyone, uh, the first thing is this is part. It's supposed to be a fun presentation. I hope it is for you. It's dropping some snippets around. It's not telling you what agile leadership looks like. I think that's probably not a starter for most people. It's ideas to help each one of you discover your agile leadership journey if that's of interest to you. And one of the things I did when I was creating this talk is I put it out into the community, to my social community, and I crowdsourced it. So I want to thank folks. Some of these snippets, these leadership ideas are mine. Many of them are mine, but a lot of them came from the community, and I've merged them into the talk. So thank you to the community for that. Uh, an entry premise is I want you all, whether I literally don't care what your title is or where you're at in the org chart. I would like you to consider, at least for the next 45 minutes or so, consider the notion that we're all leaders, uh, what, independent of our title, that how we show up matters as leaders. People are paying attention. An individual on a team, a development team, a Scrum team, a Kanban team, is a leader in their own right. So I want this to be a general purpose thought experiment for everyone to evaluate your leadership in your context and what you can do to grow yourself as an agile leader. Uh, it's going to take this form, and hopefully you don't tune it out. And there's a game that you can go along here too. As we go through the slides, you can sort of jot down who is the picture of who, and at the end you can test yourself. Some of these pictures are famous individuals. A lot of them are folks who are agilists in our agile community. So it might be fun as you go along to see if you recognize the folks. The first step, you might be an agile leader if you are the quiet in the storm, that you are that rock in the storm. You might be an agile leader if you realize that to be a good leader, you need to be a good follower, and that it's an inside-out job. So don't start leading from the outside, start leading from the inside. What kind of a leader are you? This gentleman, I'll release his name is Ralph Kasuba. I've worked for Ralph in 3 different companies. And one of the things that attracted me to Ralph is the fact that he's a humble and he's an internal leader. He walks his talk. He's a good follower. He's a good listener. And I think that makes a good agile leader. So this is a tip of the hat to Ralph Kazuba. You might be an agile leader if you are more concerned about real outcomes over raw output. So customer impact versus lines of code. You might be an agile leader if you are more than willing to coach the team in servitude to their needs and let them fly without your help or interference, even if it means they may fall to the ground every now and then as they try out their new wings. Getting that balance right is incredibly important as a leader. I see so many leaders that lean too far into into their teams. There's that notion of micromanagement, and I think not triggering on that term, but are you giving your team? Here's the question: you might be an agile leader if you're giving your team sufficient space to grow. Ask yourself that question. You might be an agile leader if you sometimes wonder if you've lost your mind since no one else seems to understand what you're talking about. Because you're talking about things like lean, cycle and lead time, DevOps, Scrum, Kanban. It is a gobbledygook of terms sometimes, safe, MVPs, velocity, story points, and refactoring. So if you find yourself, if you find yourself spewing those terms, you might be an agile leader. One thing to think about with this is, are folks understanding what you're saying? And are you clearly communicating? I'm actually starting to descale my terminology, my agile terminology, and talking about business impact as an agile leader. You might be an agile leader if someone starts a conversation with, I know you won't like it, but. And what that's saying is you've created safety as an agile leader so you can have truth telling, so you can get raw and candid feedback. And you've set the space for that as an agile leader. You might be an agile leader if you suddenly realize that you don't test in quality, or maybe you don't suddenly realize it, but you've realized it for a long time, and that testing is a profession, and that testers are first-class citizens. I think in the 90s, 2000s, maybe 2010s, I've seen a change in the progression of how testing and testers and professional QA and automation it fits into IT teams. And I think there's increased respect or increased understanding of the professional testing, but I do think there's still room to grow um, in looking at testers equivalent to developers professionally. You might be an agile leader if you never stop learning. You are insatiably curious and about the roots, tactics, and the why. Why are we going agile? Not because my boss told me so, or not because the CEO told us so, but what is the business outcomes we're trying to achieve? What problems are we trying to solve? The why. And this is inside out. You're a learner. You're not paying for other people to learn. You start with you first. You might be an agile leader if you've had the "a tool does not make you agile" conversation more than 10 times or within the last 10 minutes. I remember quite a few years ago, I was consulting, but it was really more helping a local company who was starting up and going agile. And they were just starting to build some Scrum teams. And their first two acquisitions at a leadership level, the first two things that they were thinking about is that we have to get a tool. They were talking about Jira at the time, and we have to get a scaling framework. And they were talking about SAFe at the time, the Scaled Agile Framework. And they were just beginning. And I thought that they were putting the cart before the horse a little bit. It's like the tool doesn't make you agile, and the scaling framework doesn't make you agile. Think about that. And are you having those conversations? You might be an agile leader if you recognize that the terms leader and leadership are nominalizations of the verb to lead, which is an action that anyone can engage in as the situation calls for. I think checking your agile leadership, are you an agile leader? Are you inspiring acts of leadership around you to the point where you can step back in your leadership and people are stepping forward and leading with you? Are you co-creating an environment where leadership is the norm and it's situational leadership? It's not a person, but it's an action. You might be an agile leader if you are willing to piss people off with tough love and respect. I love Colin Powell. He did a leadership slide deck that I discovered, decades ago, and I'm enamored with it. I think I still have it around somewhere, like 20 or 30 practices of leadership, and this was one of them at the time. And I miss him. He passed away some time ago, and he talks about it's not that you were trying to piss people off, but you have the courage to have the tough conversations. Maybe think of it as radical. A more common term today is radical candor by Kim Scott. That we're willing to have that radically candid conversation as agile leaders. So you might be if you're doing that kind of stuff. As part of this talk, I want you to be jotting down. Part of this is like a test of your self-awareness and your checkpoint. Where am I? And is what Bob said, is that an idea that I want to add to my repertoire as a leader, or is it something I want to learn and develop? So maybe create a list of learning and development points. You might be an agile leader if you mull things over continuously, carefully considering when and when not to engage. This is something I'm constantly reflecting on as a leader. Do I really need to? So think of the metaphor as stepping in and stepping out. And how often do you step into the teams and lead or tell or prescribe? And how often do you step out away and just observe? And maybe ask some questions. So stepping in and stepping out. You might be an agile leader if you do more stepping out than stepping in. You might be an agile leader if you understand the power of basing decisions from objective evidence of working software. One of the beautiful things, and I think we lost it, the early days in Agile, we lost this notion of extreme programming. We've lost a connection to extreme programming. And I remember one of the attributes of extreme programming in the early, I sound like a dinosaur, in the early days of Agile was working software. And it's in the manifesto as well. Working software trumps everything. It trumps documentation. It trumps yakking about it. It trumps complaining about it. It's show me the prototype. Show me the code. Show me the application running. And that's base our decisions based on working software. So you might be an agile leader if you're emphasizing working code. Show me the code. That's something in the back of your mind. You might be an agile leader if you understand that asking questions is far more important than giving answers. That's that stepping back and stepping in that I was talking about. Asking good questions, asking open-ended questions of your team, of your organization, and then not immediately leading them to the answer, but reserving it. And even having the humility of saying, I don't know the answer, but here's a question. Why don't we try to figure out the solution to this together? Why don't we co-create? I should have one of these patterns that talks about co-creation, the mindset of co-creation, not soul creation, right? That as a leader, how much co-creation are we generating in the organization? You might be an agile leader if you lead by example. Explain why, extend trust, and eat last. There's this notion of walking our talk, of explaining why. I was at a conference yesterday in Las Vegas. I'm home now, and I was teaching a leadership workshop, and I was talking about, I think one of the roles of a leader, of an agile leader, is to become a why-inator and to connect the dots from the organizational why down to the team why. Why am I working on this? And connecting the dots to the higher level goals and strategy and vision of the organization. I don't think as a leader you can explain why too often. Right? Certainly once is not good enough. Or PowerPoint. It's why. Why are we doing this? What problem are we trying to solve? Connect the dots to the customer. Connect the dots to the solution. Connect the dots to the value proposition. And then eat last is put your teams, be a servant to your teams. Right. The value proposition, I think we've lost this to some degree in today's technology organizations. We A lot of organizations seem to be about the leadership or the PMO, and all of those things, are valuable, but it's really about the people delivering the value, and that's your teams. So are we eating last and we're putting the teams first as part of that mindset? You might be an agile leader if you seek out others within your organization that are championing agile methodologies and you support and empower them. So you're creating a coalition, a guiding coalition. Not very often, agile is a transformation. It's a change. It's an organizational transformation. And one of the worst mistakes you can make as a leader is going it alone. So this is that coalition aspect and looking for like-minded individuals, uh, partners, partners in crime in order to change the leadership dynamic. You might be an agile leader if you found yourself telling managers and teams that they need to slow down to go fast. And and the punchline is, and you actually believed it in your heart, right? That slowing down actually sort thinking, not just reacting, can actually go fast. Um, so stop starting and start delivering. Start delivering done things would be another part of this. Is delivery, is done, is delivering value. You might be an agile leader if you understand that open office space isn't the only collaboration setup. One of the things and now COVID has disrupted this, but you still see what's going on, this going on in today's environments. But originally, when Agile first, popped on the scene, there was this notion of you need two environments for teams. You need commons, which is collaborative environments. Call it a shared room where people are sitting together, whiteboards and things like that. Some people call them pods, etc. But then what's missing and people forgot is you need caves, which are private areas. Many developers or technologists are introverts. It's not just about the type or the introversion. It's about we need time to think, private time to create, to ideate. And so there's this oscillation between common collaborative areas, whether it's virtual or in person, and then giving the space for people to just quietly work by themselves. So you might be an agile leader if you understand that balance, and not just understand it, but you're providing it, you're encouraging it, you're rewarding it, and creating both spaces in your teams. You might be an agile leader if you've made the shift from projects to product thinking. And from resources, I want everyone to pinky swear. So I have this little pinky swear thing here. Please, just for now, pinky swear that you will never refer to people as resources again. I'm going to give you time to digest that. Don't call people resources. And I hear someone saying, Bob, but what do we call them? You call them people. Okay, we make that shift. You might be an agile leader if you've taken the time to share your vision and mission with every member of your team. Not just once, but multiple times. You remember that connect the dots metaphor that I was talking about? Then reinforced it continuously in everyday conversations. Reinforce the whyinator, the connector, the connect the dots. Make sure that every individual contributor understands what their role is in rolling up to the bottom line in the mission and vision every day. You can't overdo that. You might be an agile leader if you realize that change, real change, cannot be forced, planned, driven, or coerced. You must invite and inspire it. I have an idea to share with everyone from an agile leadership perspective. Instead of telling people what to do, invite them in. A lot of organizations now, when they're transforming to agile, we're going agile, we're doing this agile thing, Scrum thing, Kanban thing, safe thing. Uh, the the leadership team tells the teams, you are going this. You prescribe. There's not a lot of buy-in in that strategy. Um, in this case, can you flip it? Can you flip the messaging to invite people to participate? There is so prescription is much less powerful if you're trying to get engaged people than invitation. So can you change your style to be more invitational based? Invite people along and allow folks to opt out if they're not ready for the change. That can be incredibly powerful and empowering to the team. So think about flipping the bit as often as you can to an invitation style. You might be an agile leader if you've discovered that plans are valueless. I think there's a quote for this, but I think it's an Eisenhower quote actually, but the act of planning is invaluable, even if you have a certification. So it's the planning, it's the activity that's important and encouraging that. I usually during this talk, I'm not going to do it today. I show a couple of videos, and this is one of them from Indiana Jones, and it's you might be an agile leader if you are willing to take a risk, making a leap of faith. I've been doing this for over 2 decades, so this is agile consulting from the inside and as an outside consultant, an agile coach, an agile leader guiding transformations. And for me, one of the things I've discovered along that journey is very often it's a leap of faith. You have to trust in the agile principles and then try it, and then you get affirmation. If you're looking for evidence-based things to convince you to try, very often folks won't leap in. So there's a leap and then validation as opposed to validation that drives the leap. I don't know how else to describe it. The other part of that is teams then need the leader to lead the leap of faith. You might be an agile leader if Saturday breakfast with the family kicks off with, what did you do yesterday, plan on doing today? This is an homage to the 3 questions in the daily stand-up. You might be an agile leader if you listen twice as much as you speak. I guess that's why we have 2 ears and only one mouth. This came from my community, so I sort of like it, and I don't know if I sort of struggle with the ears and the eyes. But the point is listening. Actually, leaders, I wish more leaders, agile leaders, made the switch from emphasis on speaking to emphasis on listening. Maybe apply Pareto to it, where it was the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you're listening, and 20% of the time you're speaking. How cool would that be if we make that pivot? A lot of leaders talk too much, myself included. You might be an agile leader if, instead of looking for individuals to blame, and gosh, I see blame so much nowadays. As a coach, I often have clients that talk to me. It's like, I want, who who created that problem. They want me as a coach to identify individuals to blame. And actually, as part of my coaching mindset and my coaching goals or contract, I don't do that. But you look, instead of doing that, you look for improvements in this system. And the important point here is improvements in yourself, right? Like as a leader, it's not always about the teams. Very largely, it's about you. What are you doing? What change can you make? What you are leading in a system. Any failure is reflective of you. So what part did you play? And it's not the blame, it's the continuous improvement. You might be an agile leader if you understand that the importance of technical practice, technical excellence, and the power of the XP practices. This is what I was talking about earlier. This may sound like I'm regressing, and I am. I'm intentionally. We've lost professionalism in the craft of software development. And as an agile leader, you want to re-emphasize that. I think we've lost professionalism and craftsmanship and accountability and ownership to build great things. And we've talked more, we've emphasized the planning and the execution and the leadership, but we really need to get back at the team level. And are we focusing on doing great work? You might be an agile leader if you are willing to provide a vision and let the crew steer the ship toward it. This is one of those things. Stepping in, what would step in looks like? Step into the team and provide a vision, a mission and a vision, a high level why, and then step back and create the space for the team to steer to that vision. Step in, provide it, step back. If they're going off course, step in and remind them of the vision. Step back. Okay. Step in, step back. You might be an agile leader if your honey-do list on the fridge is actually an operational Kanban board. Once years ago, I was coaching. I was visiting a company in Dallas, and I was doing some training. They were, a recruiting firm there, and they would do workshops. And the senior VP or the general manager of the Dallas facility um, was enamored with Agile, and he started taking it home to his children. And he started operating his household with a Kanban board and or Scrum, but a Scrum board. And his children, they would have daily stand-ups, and they would have sprint planning, and they would meet, and their board was on the refrigerator. And I just go back to I was always torn, where I'm very passionate about Agile. There's a line I think to be to be struck of how much Agile do you bring into your home, and how much damage are you doing to your family by making them Agile. And I always wondered if he invited his children, or if he told them that. So if he told them they were going to do Scrum, or if he invited them to do Scrum, and which one it was. So I suspect they're still doing that to this day. You might be an agile leader if sticky notes and index cards make you happy. And Sharpies. Sharpies delight you. Real ones, not the virtual ones. So yes, we can have virtual Sharpies and Post-it notes in a COVID world, but real ones, they're that tactile, low fidelity. So the essence of agility is get as low fidelity as you can, which then sort of increases high collaboration, low fidelity, high face-to-face collaboration. Even in a virtual world, trying to simulate that to the degree that we can will have better results. I hope you're enjoying these snippets. Please don't think that you have to adhere to all of these, but I hope I'm making you think about characteristics. I come back to making that list of areas. Where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, where would you like to improve? I don't really care if you call yourself a leader or an agile leader or whatever. We're all leaders, remember? So this is like practices to get better at leadership. You might be an agile leader if you truly believe that the success of the team is more important than your success. And this is something to look in your heart. I didn't used to. My ego got in the way in my own career development. So decades ago, I said the words. I said the agile leadership words. I'm a servant leader. But in my heart of hearts, I really wasn't. I cared about the teams, but I equally cared or more cared about Bob Galen and my progression and my ego. Uh, and now I've made the switch where I am careless about Bob and I'm more careful about the team and by being careful about the team, I've then served Bob as well. So it's making that transition in your DNA, regardless of the pressure that's on you. Like I'm serving the team no matter how much downward pressure there is. You might be an agile leader if you never ever get stuck in your plans, really realizing that plans must change based on the results. This is a coach in football, so I'm not going to name him or the team that he coaches. But one of the things that he does a really great job of, and other coaches do this as well, is at halftime or at intermissions, making game time adjustments. So sports teams spend an inordinate amount of time planning, putting a game plan together. But it's just that it's a plan. Then they get into the game. And a lot of coaches get stuck on their plan. Well, we planned it. We spent days planning this. We're going to execute this sucker no matter what, no matter what's happening. It'll turn itself around. And I don't think that's a good strategy. It's like look at it, and if the plan is unfolding properly and it's working, then great. But if it's not, then make some pivots. Don't get stuck in your planning. He does a great job of that, of game time adjustments. And I think that's a rare quality in many coaches, and I think that's a rare quality in many agile leaders. You might be an agile leader if you create the space for agility, while also providing cover when required so that teams feel protected. Part of agile leadership is protecting the team, covering for the team, right? That doesn't mean defending the team or being defensive. It means supporting your team and understanding, walking in their shoes, empathy. Do you have empathy for your teams? Have you Gemba walked in the team? Have you walked with the teams just quietly and observed? Do you understand what their tension points are? Do you understand what their skill sets are? So it's incredibly important to do that. There's some of these pictures where people who we've lost in the agile community, and you'll see we sometimes I note we miss you, and these folks are no longer with us, but they made a fantastic impression on the agile community. So you might be an agile leader if your budget favors value streams rather than projects. So this is moving from that project thinking to product thinking, from time-bound execution efforts to ongoing product development and investment and ROI and value streams. Is making many organizations today are making many organizations are making that transition because it's more effective. And as an agile leader, how are you helping guiding that? You might be an agile leader if you realize that Spotify, if that term doesn't resonate with you, then you can ignore this. Or Facebook or Valve or Google. In the agile community, a lot of people name drop. They name drop methodologies. They name drop authors, me, other people. They name drop companies. Except, oh, Google has this right, or we're going to use the Spotify models. So you realize that those things aren't the best role models. They're just examples. I'll extend this. You might be an agile leader if you don't get hooked and try to mirror the role models. You create your own role model, whether you broadcast it or not. You might be an agile leader if you set clear goals, objectives, and explain the why behind them. I'm a little bit of a broken record here, but you get the point. Then you get the hell out of the way. You might be an agile leader if you suddenly burst into spontaneous applause as one of your teams blows you away with their efforts in the sprint demo. I think sprint reviews, sprint demos are a wonderful place for leaders to connect to their teams, to give them constructive feedback, to give them feedback on the future, but also just to give them positive feedback of how proud you are of them. Very often, folks are just sitting there, either virtually or in person. Maybe provide a little bit of feedback. I've been known to run up in person and high five the entire team and get excited, and just almost have tears running in my face when they've delivered something that has incredible value, or a team has shown incredible creativity or empowerment or whatnot. An agile leader sort of has that spontaneity and that ability to sort of, inspire the team by their actions, by letting them know. You might be an agile leader if you realize that agile doesn't hurt people. This is tongue in cheek. Agile scaling frameworks and other silver bullet thinking hurts people. Don't get caught up with silver bullets. Remember earlier I said safe earlier on, and Jira it's focusing on mindset over the tools. The tools are great. And methods are great, but it's about getting that mindset as a team. Activating your team is the point. You might be an agile leader if you've invested in a successful distributed teams via tools, travel budget, charting, clustering, and a team commitment to collaboration. Distributed teams is really challenging. As a leader, you need to provide all of the facilities, but you also have to reinforce that they have to commit to collaborate, even if the time zones are a challenge. They have to overcome that. And the reason for that is to work together as a team, to commit to their team. So provide the tooling, but it's still going to be challenging to collaborate if you have a spatially distributed team. And we need them to step up as a team and be a team. You might be an agile leader if, boy, that hair always scares me when I see it. Uh, I can't look. So you might be an agile leader if you're not afraid to say, I don't know, or I made a mistake, or I failed. I would encourage all of you to keep track on a weekly basis how many times you say those things. And if the answer is zero or very low, you have some work to do in increasing your vulnerability. Agile leadership is one of the attributes is sharing your vulnerabilities. And actually part of that is it's not just about sharing your vulnerabilities, it's about creating psychological safety in the team. Oh, because you said I don't know, it's okay for others to say I don't know. Because you exposed a failure in your learning, it's okay, it's safe to fail. Not that failure's the point, but we don't have to hide our failures. We don't have to hide our weaknesses. You might be a natural leader if you've proven to be patient and a guiding coaching presence as everyone navigates the change. I think of this as like steering the ship in a very soft way through change, being there when you need to, providing confidence, providing counsel, sometimes providing prescriptive guidance, and being prescriptive, knowing when to lean in and knowing when to lean out. Lean out. You might be an agile leader if you believe that logic, agile, clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I'm purely putting this into as an homage to technologists who are viewing this, but I think the quote stands for itself. You might be an agile leader if you realize that cross-functional leadership alignment is crucial. And I mean real alignment on principles, tactics, and goals. One of the number one problems in agile transformations at a leadership level is leaders think they say they're aligned. They say they support each other's agendas. They say that they're equally supporting the high level strategy. But when you look at their actions, they're not the same. They have not aligned. And what then happens is that misalignment, that miscommunication trickles into the teams and it creates conflict at a team level. And very often people look at the team and say the team is broken. And what's really broken is alignment at a leadership level. Leadership, I can't tell you how important it is for agile leaders to align amongst themselves. And that's to challenge each other. If you're not sure, then challenge each other and make sure that you're aligned. You might be an agile leader if you've concluded that the culture of an organization is shaped by the best behavior that the leader you is willing to amplify. You are a culture shaper. Agile leaders, your role, you are shaping culture, right? If you roll your eyes in a meeting when Bob Galen, if you're rolling your eyes now when I'm talking and you're discounting what I'm saying, then but you didn't say anything and other people see that, the eye rolls in the room, you have now shaped the culture. You shaped it in disrespect and tuning out. It's not about Bob Gale. It's about your actions and behaviors are shaping what is the best and the worst behaviors. And folks are watching that. So be sharp on that. You might be an agile leader if your two dogs are named Inspect and Adapt, which is an homage to Scrum. You might be an agile leader if you're a role model for other leaders, walking your talk and mentoring them in their journeys. Think of yourself as a living, breathing coach and walking your talk without saying anything. Your behavior speaks for itself, and folks are watching that. I'm an agile coach, and one of my most powerful coaching stances, believe it or not, is not actively coaching, but just showing people what good looks like. And not that I'm perfect, but how I show up. Am I walking my talk? Am I creating psychological safety? Do I want to hear from all voices? Do I have the hard conversations? Do I show respect to teams? Whatever the dynamics are, am I showing up with those agile mindsets and the principles? And not only when times are easy, but when the going is tough, when the pressure's on, do I maintain my principle alignment when the pressure's on? And that's important. Folks are paying attention to that. I'm just doing a quick time check. You might be an agile leader if you realize that leadership is totally situational and context driven. In fact, what's the context is your favorite question. You might be an agile leader if, when in doubt, you ask team members for their advice, pushing decision making as low as possible. One of my favorite questions of leaders, a lot of times in organizations, people come to me and they look at me as an agile guide. I'm like the agile guru. And it's like, what should we do? And probably 80 to 90% of the time, my response is, did you ask the team? Or what did the team say? Or trust the team? And I mean that. So ask your team. You might be an agile leader if you understand that reorganizations and more reorganizations don't solve problems. So titles, org charts, realignment of structure doesn't solve problems. People do. You might be an agile leader if, in order to that you that you empty your cup. So part of I probably should have put this pattern first. In order to really get something out of this session, I think you have to empty some of your you probably need to, as a leader, you probably need to empty some of your cup in order to fill it up with some new ideas. I don't know which ones, that's up to you, but some new ideas. You might be an agile leader if you have an insatiable curiosity, joy to see how much teams, when empowered, can accomplish. Yesterday I was talking about this. Nothing gets me more excited than seeing high performance agile teams just kicking butt on their own. Like the promise and the power of a team is phenomenal to me. It surprises me. It's like be prepared to be amazed at the power of the wonderful people you've hired and create that space in your mindset. You might be an agile leader if you've just signed up for a 3-week bucket list vacation. Everyone, I want you to think about this without worrying about how your organization or team handles your absence. In fact, totally disconnecting. Like you don't care. The team's got it. You've done your job as a leader and they've got it. And through they'll figure that everything out. And you have zero concern. You might be an agile leader if you don't shy away from the hard conversations with all levels of your organization. You're a courageous, straight shooting truth teller. And there's power dynamics here, and there's safety dynamics, and there's courageous dynamics. I get all of that. But how are you showing up that way? You might be an agile leader if you are occasionally prescriptive with your teams in mission, goal setting, and agile behaviors. It's not all about the inmates run the asylum. Agile leadership requires tough situational dynamics. Sometimes you have to come in and tell the team what to do. You have to decide when to do that. You might be an agile leader if you've never used trust but verify thinking with your teams. Instead, you freely extend trust. It turns out that, and I hear this language a lot, trust but verify is not a heavy trust model. It's extending trust. Try to extend trust as much as you can. Not blindly, but extend trust to the team. Convince, make the teams believe that you trust them by trusting them. You might be an agile leader if you've leveraged effective storytelling as a communication device. Remember, I was talking about connecting the dots earlier. One of the most effective ways to do that is, I think, today's modern leaders, agile leaders, modern leaders, need to become adept storytellers as as an effective communication device to their teams. So sharpen your storytelling skills. I can't tell you how important that is. You might be an agile leader if you can say no to more projects, products, WIP, work in progress, and feel good about yourself. Feel good about saying no. Feel good that no is not a bad word. No means we've hit constraints. We've hit our capacity. We can't do one more. We need to make a choice. Is it A or B? And we're good at doing that. You might be an agile leader if you realize that high performing, balanced, sustained, inspired agility needs leaders and the craft of leadership, which is around what we've been talking about here. And I just had so for everyone, Bono from the band U2, just a leader in the world landscape. Forget the band, just a real good role model. You might be an agile leader if you discover that when you leave your organization, everyone around you says that we did it our way. So you led and created a culture that was not dependent on you. How wonderful would that be? And finally, that's it. I want to thank you. You all might be an agile leader. It's not the agile, it's the leader. It's get better at some of these dynamics of leaderships. Your organizations need you to be there. You need to be there. Your teams need you to be there. So I want to thank Susan and everyone for inviting me. All right.
Bob, thank you so much for presenting with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.